Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
Evan, you'll be happy to know that even though you weren't there at Winged Wheel Podcast Night to sign all the autographs that were requested directly from you, we did give everyone who made that request your personal home address to mail in their things that they want signed. And we said there was no restrictions and there was no return postage needed to be included. So it'll be like you were there the whole time, buddy.
Yeah, I'll be sure to get right on top of that and get that done.
I'll drop off a Sharpie at your house. Hey, did you like the bubbly flavors we got for you?
I've tried the triple fruit. Yeah, that's a triple berry or whatever. It's a game changer. Why does America have all the best stuff? Oh man, the Target run was Evan was really bummed to not come. But that was his one demand, is that we went to Target and we got him the caffeinated bubbly. So at least he's still on brand. And I had one, so I've got a little bit more energy.
Nice. Well, post Winged Wheel Podcast Night, Brad, I can see that you are, by the legal definition, alive.
Kind of, yeah.
I want everyone to know, I woke up at, I woke up just a little bit past 9 this morning. We were getting ready to leave. And by that point, you were probably most of the way home, Brad, because you got up and left at 6:30 a.m. Am I right?
We walked through our front door at 20 after 9. Just enough time to grab our hockey gear and get to the charity game we had to play today.
That's miserable news. I think
like
before... Before we get talking about the event, first, a little bit of a checkup. We are obviously doing this episode remote. So, Evan, how are you feeling?
I feel completely fine. Like, actually completely fine.
Today's weather in Detroit, like blue sky, warm, sunny, just a light breeze. I was like, that's extremely rude considering the weather we had yesterday. And this is like the health equivalent of that.
Yeah, pretty much. I did not feel bad on Saturday, so that sucked. And today I feel completely fine. So, but I was still testing positive as of yesterday. So there was no surprise entrance by me to the event.
That's only Mickey Redmond is able to do those. Sorry, man. He's got those patented. Okay, folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. If you are a new listener, this is a rare remote episode where we are all in our own homes, as Evan, one of our hosts, has unfortunately come down with COVID, but we are usually in studio. But welcome to the show. First episode post Winged Wheel Podcast Night at the LCA Part 2. I am one of your hosts, caffeinated with a few hours left of consciousness, Ryan Hanna.
With even less time than that, I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we will be recapping Winged Wheel Podcast Night at the LCA and all of the amazing things that you all helped us accomplish. For those of you who are interested in hearing that. And then we'll be, of course, talking about the Detroit Red Wings game that we got to witness from some new angles, with some familiar storylines. So it's good to know that even when we're there, we could still see the same prototypical Red Wings stories in person. There's some news across the world of hockey in terms of the NCAA, across the world of hockey in terms of the NHL, with some of the best players in the NHL, in the headlines for good and bad reasons, from Matthews to Malkin. I know Red Wings fans' favorites, and we'll get into overtime. Before we do that, I do want to mention the Jamie Daniels Foundation and their Comedy Night of Hope that is coming up. So all of you were very excited to see Ken Daniels and Mickey Redmond, and they talked about this at Winged Wheel Podcast Night as well. Comedy Night of Hope is on Sunday, May 1st at Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle in Royal Oak, Michigan. Tickets are as low as $50 and includes it includes lunch or dinner depending on the show you go to. The purchase of your ticket goes directly to support a new adolescent substance abuse treatment center that cares for youth regardless of insurance coverage or ability to self-pay, which is a vital lifeline for youth and families in Southeast Michigan. The show features 3 headliner comedians and is sponsored by Priority Waste and Cranks Catering. To purchase tickets, go to jamiedanielsfoundation.com. So let's talk about Winged Wheel Podcast Night at the LCA. It was our second ever time running this. So first off, we'd like to give some thank yous first and foremost to Ken Daniels and Mickey Redmond for being the stars of the show. I think it was pretty surreal. The moment people saw Mickey Redmond come into the first event, which is a little bit of a surprise to them, the audible gasp, I'll never forget that. But when Mickey Redmond entered this event, and immediately the whole crowd burst into a Mickey Redmond chant, I was like, this isn't this isn't a Winged Wheel Podcast Night show. Like, we are the guests. This is Ken Daniels and Mickey Redmond's show. Evan is probably the only one who can come close to that chant, but the Mickey Redmond chant was incredible.
I'm a big fan of the moments where we do not have to do anything. We're just kind of there witnessing history.
The live show was a blast. You guys filled the beer garden, the Budweiser beer garden again, to the point where, I mean, we're going to have to build a bigger venue. Speaking of which, the thank you has to go out to our partners, the Detroit Red Wings, everyone over there who helped us put this thing together. There's so many of you, and it's been such an incredible process and an incredible thing to see come together for the second time now. So thank you all. The Detroit Red Wings are incredible, an amazing support, and we really appreciate them supporting not just this event, but the continuation of it as well. And all of you, 435 or 440 tickets sold, I think. I've yet to tally up the numbers, but you have raised another $4,000 to $5,000 for the Jamie Daniels Foundation through Wings Money on the Board, and the sale of tickets for that event. So we're getting close to 15,000 on the season. And I think we can push that 20,000 mark by the end of the season that we were aiming for. So we talk on a podcast, and I mean it when I say we don't have the words to say thanks. We don't have the right words to properly acknowledge the incredible support that you guys have shown. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And Ken thanks you, as he said at the event, so much. Blown away. Genuinely feeling tingles talking about this. The gondola seats, those were fun. Evan, you are going to have a blast going up there. Max swears by the gondola view because he says you can see the play develop and unfold in a different way. And I have to say, he's right. Like, it was really cool to watch it from above.
How was the vertigo from trying to get up there?
Wasn't too bad. We could use, with the way I ate this weekend, the stairs I definitely were justified. I should have done a few more up and downs of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Honestly, at least you remembered to eat this time.
Yes, that was very good. I was able to. Yeah, it was. I was the inverse of last time. So, and of course, thank you to Harry's Detroit for hosting the after party. You all filled the upstairs of that bar, and I think some of the downstairs too. So that was a lot of fun, and I think everyone was just drained. At one point, a whole wedding walked in, which I was like, hey, if you want to celebrate your newfound marriage by celebrating at Winged Wheel Podcast Night, good for you. But no, it was really cool to see the bar filled with Winged Wheel Podcast listeners for most of the night, and the after party was a lot of fun. So thank you to Harry's, and it was a great spot and a great staff, and we look forward to working with them again. It was also kids' night. Brad and Mika had a great time.
Oh, she had the best day ever. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I say she was walking through the concourse and on the drive after just going, this is the best day ever. Because she got her face painted. She got on the Jumbotron again. She's 3 for 3 at Red Wings games. Just a whole bunch of other cool stuff that she got to do while kicking around the arena. Obviously, the game itself she loved, since there was a bunch of goals that she got to celebrate. Yeah, honestly, everything about that for Mika was just unbelievable. And even like all the people she met at the event, because obviously I tell enough stories about Mika here that almost everybody at it knew of her. Like, obviously didn't know her, but knew of her, knew who Mika was. And there was only one 5-year-old running around the event, so it wasn't hard to figure out who she was. And she kept coming up to me. She goes, Daddy, who was that person? And I'm like, I don't know. How do they know me? Mika, I tried explaining this to you. We've told stories of you many, many times. They're going to know who you are. And so that was adorable. She's like, she had that moment of, why do so many people know me when I don't know them? And it's just like, Mika, you're a big deal.
Yeah, Mika's a real star.
She really, truly was.
And of course, I know, Evan, it's awkward with you sitting right here, but the event's not the same without you. But
I'm not listening. You can.
Yeah. The moment you start to say anything sappy towards Evan, he tunes out. But genuinely, the event isn't the same without Evan, and I know you guys felt it. So that just means the next one, we're going to have to go even bigger and better for him. And of course, Prashant Iyer wasn't able to make it as well, and we were looking forward to having him on the panel. All of you who were there, Mika's right. It is surreal, and to know that room is filled with Winged Wheel podcast listeners and the support you show, and people coming in from around Detroit and Michigan, and people driving in or flying in from hours away. I was talking to some people from Tallahassee. I was talking to some people from Oshawa. Of course, the Grand Rapids crew came in, and seeing Adriana's sign with my stupid meme face on it, and the moment where Mickey saw the Winged Wheel podcast flannel shirts that we made for him, like we always work to make these events bigger and better for you, and genuinely we do. Like, we debrief, we take notes, we're going to send out a survey for you to give feedback, but we couldn't have asked for a better event. So thank you all, thank you.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's so many funny moments, just honestly way too many to list out individually. So many people, so many great stories, so many interesting hockey opinions. It's a great night. I love it. I live for those conversations. Just everybody coming up. Brad, hypothetical question. All right, here we go.
Yeah. The video of the live show, it takes a little while to work with that audio and get it together, but we will post it later this week, hopefully sooner rather than later, and you can see the moment where Mickey got his custom Winged Wheel podcast flannel. Of all the merch we've ever put out, the custom like Mickey Redmond style flannel with the Winged Wheel podcast embroidered logo, I had people like grab me by the shoulders and shake me saying, when are you going to sell this? So we're going to work on that. They're a little bit hard to put together, but we're going to work on making them available for you guys. So I'm glad you all liked it so much. And the bonus episode where you can listen to the live show or watch it will be coming eventually. So keep your eye out for that.
The next event is just going to be a sea of flannels. Just
Evan was really excited when I dropped his off at his front door. All right, the Detroit Red Wings. We joked, we're like, it's the Columbus Blue Jackets. It's a late season game. Both teams are dealing with maybe a lackluster season in different ways. I know Columbus had a little bit of a COVID bugaboo there, so I was like, I'm not really expecting a barn burner. And for a little bit in the game, it was looking kind of dull, or it was looking like Detroit, at points couldn't even enter the zone. But by the end, that game was a bit of a barn burner. Like, that was actually a blast to watch.
When Columbus went up 4-2 in the third period and I saw a handful of people leaving the arena, I'm like, there it is. We're coming back. That's exactly what we needed, because we had a bunch of dummies leaving early. I would say the Red Wings had a good start to the game. Actually, they had a lot of chances early, and then hit a wall for 20, 25 minutes of game time, and then obviously a little hot and cold before the final 10 minutes of the third period. But yeah, overall it was a pretty good game for them. I think they ended up out shooting Columbus, despite really getting shafted on the penalty differentials. But yeah, honestly, considering by the time this game started, due to the Washington Capitals win that afternoon, the Red Wings were mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. So it was their first game with truly nothing to play for. It was nice to see them not fold up and call it a day.
We can't have this conversation about that game without talking about how special of a goal scorer Jakub Vrana is, which I know this is the first time we've ever talked about it on this podcast, but genuinely, it's to the point where you watch him score a goal and it doesn't seem to be any kind of a special release, and it doesn't seem to be any kind of a special deke to create space or whatever it is. And you look at it and you're like, that doesn't go in for anyone else but Vrana. which is when you do the mental math of it's not luck. There are little things that shooters do or that guys like Vrana do who just have that scoring touch, and that's what it is. The scoring touch isn't about like the bar down right over the goalie's shoulder next to his head every time. The scoring touch is making, the poor angle shots or the lower percentage shots go in more often than not, in my opinion. And, Vrana does all of that. And for him to score at will, he opened the scoring for Detroit and he scored the tying goal with under 4 minutes left in the third. From above, from the bird's eye view, you're watching, you're like, this guy is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, honestly, that Zadina, Vrana, Suter line was comfortably the Red Wings' best line yesterday. They controlled play. It seemed like every time they were on the ice, they were making things happen. They had a lot of chances. It's not even like Vrana was carrying some kind of horseshoe last night. Like, they were all around the net constantly, whether Merzlikins made a good save or they just missed the net or the shot was blocked. Well, obviously a lot of shots were blocked. Zadina was on the ice. But yeah, they were dominant, and it was good to see them have a good game in person because we've talked at length about the chemistry Zadina and Vrana had from last season, and we were really, really hoping to see it this year. And the first few games they played together, it looked like it was there, but obviously it's a little easier to tell in person. So getting the full ice view, it was there in spades yesterday. Those guys just find each other. There's even a couple plays they had that didn't turn out to anything because a Blue Jackets defenseman made like a nice play or just got a stick on a pass at the last second where they were circling the zone, finding each other through seams without even knowing they're there. And honestly, I joke about the Zadina block shot thing, but if not for that, they probably had 2 or 3 more than they already had. So yeah, it's unbelievable, especially when you get a line like that and then you have a guy on that line like Vrana who is such a capable finisher and is able to do it as frequently as he does.
Yeah, it seems a little bit more like the Zadina we're seeing right now is like, it sounds terrible and a little bit morbid to say, but like the Zadina who was at the beginning of his downturn this season where he was doing a lot of the right things, but the puck just wasn't going in. And it's not a flip switching with Zadina when he's off or on. It's very obviously he has to build up. So right now we're seeing him do a lot more of the right things. And like you said, Brad, playing with Vrana and Suter as well. But I mean, mostly this is Vrana here. Opening him up to be able to just kind of make those different plays is a huge difference. And it's just a domino effect because his confidence is building. So he's trying things that he wasn't doing when he was at the lowest of his lows. So the production will come if he keeps this up. And I think as long as he continues to get this opportunity, but yeah, it was, good to see that re-unlocking, that re-establishment of Zadina. I like that trend recently too, right? Because we just spend so much time talking about what, putting Michael Rasmussen in the right situations has done for his game. There's no reason why the same thing shouldn't apply to Zadina here. So Vrana scores goals and helps elevate his teammates, and that's invaluable. I have a quick stat here from Prashant. He put in the group chat. If Vrana gets 2 more goals in his next 5 games, I believe it is, he will be the fastest Red Wings player in history to score 20 career goals with the team. The current fastest is Danny Grant in 74-75, scored 21 goals in his first 32 games. Vrana has 18 and 27. That is insane.
That is just an absurd number of goals, especially considering, it's the Red Wings. He has not played with Larkin and Raymond this year, at least not for any significant amount of time. So the fact that he's doing that as he is crazy. What was his 18 goals in 26 games?
27.
27? So just quick math. He's scoring at a 55 goal pace. That's nuts.
That's almost Auston Matthews levels.
Not far off, actually.
Almost. Look, for the argument of, hey, the continuation of the Red Wings shouldn't be like tearing down a little bit more. It should be building on what they have. having a trigger man like that who's able to produce like that, mostly not on your first line and mostly not with your two best offensive players that aren't named Jakub Vrana, that bodes well, man. If you eventually get a healthy Robbie Fabry back, depending on how he returns from his ACL tear, that's going to be a game changer for Detroit.
Well, they're at this stage in the rebuild right now. It's just all about figuring out the pieces. The Red Wings are still too far away to know truly what is the core of their next contending team. Truly what type of team are they going to be when they're contending. But we can pencil in Larkin for a spot on that team. Vrana now, Seider, Raymond, etc. These are the pieces that are in place that you can say, okay, this player can slot in X spot in the lineup and this team can win a cup because, we talk about they need that second line center. They need, impact left-hand defenseman, yada, yada, yada. But what does that boil down to? When do you know if you have that player to fill said role? And they've got a lot of holes to fill because, as content as we are with, certain parts of the Red Wings, I don't think many of us think, Adam Ernie or Sam Gagner or Mark Stahl or, are going to be.
Sam Gagner's on a tear recently.
Yeah. But they're not going to be on the team when the team's contending. So even though those spots are occupied competently now, they're not long term. They're pieces. Like Mitchell Stevens, came back and this was his first game back in 5 months and he looked good. He's nothing more than a fourth line center, but he's probably the best fourth line center they have in the organization right now. And I think he put up an assist that game and had a good game. So that could and he's young enough. That could be another piece, but obviously a piece like Vrana, far more important.
Watching the game from the gondola, and this is the trademarked Ryan obvious statement, but watching what Moritz Seider does, especially carrying the puck into and around the offensive zone, this guy's decision-making, vision, and handles with the puck, we've spent probably 40% of the active podcast time this season talking about Moritz Seider specifically. That's probably not too much of an exaggeration, and I still think it's underappreciated. What this guy does with the puck is almost never a mistake, which as a defenseman, if you are a mistake-free, that is not average. You are an elite defenseman. It is almost never a mistake, and it is almost always the best or most optimal move in the offensive zone to create space or generate a strong offensive chance. Never mind his defensive prowess, which I can go on for hours about. Watching him and thinking, there's no way he just saw that player. There's no way he saw that trailer behind him. There's no way he's able to contort his, massive, he's a tall guy, tall body and long stick, to contort his body in the puck that way to make that, bounce reverse pass off the boards behind him. But he just does it, and he does it at will. And he does it repeatedly, and he does it to the point where we're going to think it's normal. I don't make this comparison lightly, and I'm not making the direct player-to-player comparison, but do you remember watching Nick Lidstrom and thinking, oh man, that basic little play where he just shut down the offensive rush, or that basic little pass that he just made, it's the fact that we've been used to watching that over the last 10, 15, however many years, and we took it for granted. We're going to get into that territory with Moritz Seider if he keeps us up. He just always makes the right move with the puck on his stick, and he's always in the right areas. I cannot believe that a rookie NHL defenseman does this so consistently. And watching it from above was surreal. All I could think of was, man, pro scouts must watch this guy and think, how the hell did my team not draft him?
Well, to be fair, 25 teams never had the chance, but he's the one thing that you really notice in person too is he's fearless. He makes super risky plays look like they're never in doubt, never in danger. The way he walks the blue line in the offensive zone. There was one time he was going to his strong side across the blue line, basically wearing the Blue Jackets defender as a backpack. And there was not 1 ounce of panic in him. And the puck was literally on his stick, touching the blue line, and he's the last guy back. And, that's the type of stuff that generally turns into a chance the other way, gets a player bench, yada, yada, yada. The Red Wings had a scoring chance 3 seconds after it because he just lost the guy, shook him, opened up the space, got it to the net, and I forget who didn't put the rebound in, but like it's not normal for a 21-year-old to be doing that.
And not to say he's like a flawless player and is never on the ice for a goal against or anything. I think he's playing 25 minutes a night at this point. Like he's going to be there for all the good and all the bad moments, most likely disproportionately good at this point. But yeah, it's watching him in person is just such, it's an even better appreciation for what the Red Wings have in Moritz Seider. So over the course of the game, obviously, the Red Wings, I mean, they got scored on another hat trick. Not his first career hat trick, as Jack Roslovic scored the hat trick against the Red Wings, including the overtime winner. Vrana scored. Sam Gagner scored off of a great setup from Mark Stahl. Excellent vision, and that's where Stevens got his assist. Larkin had a fantastic rip, like just a great snipe. And I think Raymond and Osterley was the other assist on that one, before Vrana tied the game. Off an assist from Suter, and Roslovic scored in overtime. I hate making the referees the point of focus for anything. And I think every team gets bad reffing. And I think the whole league, every sports league has bad reffing, and I'll complain about the refs personally until the end of time. That's just sports traditions. But that game was bad. That game was rough. You know, the phantom trip that was called on Tyler Bertuzzi, the non-call holds in overtime, the non-call trip or whatever it was on Rasmussen in overtime. I think that led to the goal, essentially. Just the imbalance in what was being called one way or not the other. I thought at first, I'm like, it must be my view. I must be too high up and I'm not seeing this right. But I went back and watched a lot of them and I was like, I just don't want it. I don't want to be able to point to bad calls and do any more than complain. I don't want to be able to point to those calls and say that directly affected the outcome of the game. Look, it's one game. The Red Wings probably appreciate the tank a little bit more for draft purposes. So whatever, they're not fighting for a playoff spot, but that was an especially bad show.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say the refs are out to get the Red Wings. They're not. We've said this before. This isn't any vendetta. The NHL's against any team. It's just, it's Occam's razor. And the simplest explanation here is the refs are having a really bad year. They are doing a exceptionally poor job of maintaining any consistency. That's what I want to emphasize. I don't care if they call everything. I don't care if they call nothing. I really don't. I'd rather them call closer to the rule book than use judgment, interpretation, and circumstance and situation and game management. But if you do one or the other, I'm fine with it either way. Honestly, if the refs just decided to put their whistles away for the whole game, that probably benefits the Red Wings because their special teams are terrible. But last night, when you have a accumulation of problems that the NHL refs have had this year, you will get games last night where you can argue the refs actually cost the Red Wings the game. Now, obviously, they were mathematically eliminated by the time the game started. It helps the draft spot, whatever. It's not on the big picture a bad thing. But Columbus scored a goal. It wasn't technically a power play goal because Bertuzzi had just gotten out of the box after the phantom trip, the very obvious phantom trip. And Detroit was never able to regain possession at the end of that penalty kill, and Columbus scored on it. And then, yeah, like you said, Nyquist took down Rasmussen in overtime and then got possession of the puck, and Detroit never touched the puck again. Columbus won it shortly thereafter. In a one-goal game where you can essentially directly attribute 2 goals to poor refereeing decisions, it hurts. It sucks. It's irritating. That was the angriest I've seen our Red Wings, the fans after a Red Wings game in a long time. They were literally littering the ice with trash, which, as an aside, don't do that. The referees don't have to clean that up. But, yeah, it was just exceptionally unbalanced and inconsistent last night. You know, the Red Wings had a goal waved off, and I think we all could agree that was the right call. Veleno went into the goalie of his own accord before Raymond put it in. Fine, wave it off. So the refs waved off a goal. Red Wings fans agreed with it and were still furious with the rest of the game. Like, that's how bad it was, and that's how inconsistent it was. You know, Larkin gets cross-checked in the head on one play, and the Red Wings end up shorthanded out of it. Like, it's absurd. Every scrum, it seemed like the Red Wings got singled out, which, you know, I'm not saying what they did wasn't a penalty in any of those circumstances, but man, in every scrum in NHL history, both teams are doing some shit that you can call. It's a little weird when it's only one team getting pulled and being put on the PK every time. Not literally every time, but most of the time. Like, it's just, it was one of those games. It was just the perfect microcosm of a league-wide problem this season.
I was in the other direction. I was actually a little amazed. So that scrum where Bertuzzi and Merzlikins collided, and it was called goalie interference Larkin and Merzlikins collided, and it was called goalie interference on Larkin. Apparently, I don't know. Some people said Merzlikins stuck his leg out. I actually didn't go back and watch that replay closely. Whatever. And there was a scrum after because they went after Larkin and Bertuzzi jumped in, and then Seider pulled whoever had Bertuzzi in a headlock out, and Bertuzzi got free. And Bertuzzi threw punches over like linesmen and referees' heads at like two different guys, like multiple times. Like, Bertuzzi was throwing them. And okay, first of all, from a completely biased point of view, I don't blame Bert. The game was lost at that point in terms of control from the referees, and you were never going to get any kind of like justice or whatever. And at that point, you have to settle it on the ice. Personally, love to see it. From a refereeing point of view, the fact that Bertuzzi threw those punches and was back out on the ice after a 2-minute minor penalty, I was like, you have lost control of this game. Like, this is out of control. I can't believe just the poor management of that game and the things that they called. We got to see the traditional Red Wings player boarded from behind into the boards with no call, and actually, like you said, Brad, something come against them in the end. It was just a shame. And you know what? It's not just because we were there, and it's not just because it was Winged Wheel Podcast or Night or whatever. It's just a shame that such an exciting NHL hockey game with a comeback, and where even neutral fans who I know were next to me were watching and were like, this is an amazing game. Like, this is a barn burner. It ends off of everyone just kind of groaning and going, oh my God, I can't believe they just spoiled that. So you just don't like to see it. And I hate giving it the airtime, but that's what everyone there felt. I'm surprised we didn't hear the bullshit chant. I mean, Arjun was next to me blowing out my eardrum, screaming bullshit, but I don't think the whole arena was doing it. But yeah, it was a shame. It was just a shame.
Fun little aside, Mika's story at the end of the game, because obviously when Columbus won it in overtime, the refs got booed pretty heavily, and that's when all the garbage started flying on the ice. Mika looks at me, goes, "Daddy, why is everybody booing Ned?" And I'm like, Mika, we're not. We love Ned. There was a couple Ned chants that game. We're big Ned fans.
I was saying boo Ned,
but I'm like, no, we're booing the refs. And she's like, oh, why? And she got her first lesson in what bad reffing is.
Yeah. Welcome to the show, kid. All right. Before we get into the rest of the show, let's first talk about how this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast is proudly brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook, sponsor that gives hockey fans what we really need and always enjoy, even more excitement in the game. There's so many reasons why FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. They are simple to use with great odds on different betting markets, giving you more action every game day. There's always tons of fun with unique bet types like same-game parlays and exclusive promotions on the biggest events. And when you win, you get your winnings safely in as little as 24 hours. Now listen to this. FanDuel is letting you place your first bet risk-free up to $1,000. Just place a bet on any game and FanDuel will refund you up to $1,000 back if you don't win your first bet. No strings attached. If you win, you keep the cash. If you lose, you'll get up to $1,000 back in site credit. Now, what we want you to do is download the FanDuel Sportsbook app to get started with a risk-free bet of up to $1,000, and be sure to sign up with promo code WWP so they know the Winged Wheel Podcast sent you. That's FanDuel Sportsbook, promo code WWP. You must be 21 and older and present in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, West Virginia, Indiana, Colorado, Iowa, Tennessee, Virginia, or Michigan. First online real money wager only. Site credit is non-withdrawable and expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, Arizona, 1-800-GAMBLER in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Virginia, Tennessee Redline, 1-800-889-9789, 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, or call 1-800-270-7117 in Michigan. So it's not lost to me that the first episode after a Winged Wheel podcast night, we are all like, it's terrible quality, which is bad because there's probably so many new listeners. And they're just like, why are these guys remotely, like, why does anyone listen? And to you, I say, I'm still trying to figure that out. But, you know, it's part of it is dealing with the exhaustion and part of it's just still processing, you know, what happened. So, some more shout outs here. We need to say thank you to everyone who came by. Bally Sports Detroit, the crew came by and did a feature, of us on the broadcast again, which humbling is not a strong enough word. And thank you all so much for doing that and showing this incredible community that you guys have helped us build. And it was really cool. It's always really surreal to see that on the broadcast. That will never get old. You know, hearing Winged Wheel podcast and seeing that name on the broadcast is like, yeah. And to everyone who came through, all the special guests, I know COVID, did its number on who could actually come this time, but, big shout out to Daniela Bruce, who came out and, chatted with us and chatted with people, and she had stuff to do during the game. So, thank you to Daniela. And, Daniela, I'm sorry. I know we promised you some credit on the live broadcast about Rasmussen because you stood by, but, we did the live Q&A, so we didn't get there, but we owe you one, Danielle. We have to have you back on the show to basically rub egg on everyone else's face about Ras. So thank you all. And, you're going to hear more sporadic thank yous. And, as my brain slowly collects, and you're going to see Evan roll his eyes at me even more and more. And that's just how it's going to go. Let's talk about the NCAA. So, the Red Wings have quite a few, you know, notable prospects in the system right now, but Denver, and their performance in the NCAA D1 Hockey Championship with the Frozen Four onwards, obviously lately, their performance has been fantastic, and they hold the likes of Carter Mazur, Shai Buium, and Antti Tuomisto. So big performance and huge to see those guys eventually win the tournament.
Yeah, and obviously the culmination of a good to great season for all three of them, depending on which one you're talking about. Obviously, Carter Mazur being the standout of the Red Wings group there, because younger than Tuomisto, older than Buium, despite being drafted in the same draft as Buium. His breakout performance was, I think, close to a point per game throughout the season. Believe he got an assist in the finals. Won't hold it against him that they knocked out Michigan in the semis. I'm not mad. But it was good to see that a team that had multiple Red Wings prospects who featured, like, they weren't just spare parts in the run, you know, winning the ultimate prize in NCAA hockey is really, really promising in the big picture.
Without naming names, we were talking with someone in the organization about Carter Mazur, and one of the first things we said to him was, hey, great job making us look absolutely stupid on Mazur. And, you know, not that going back to draft time, it's not that we hated Mazur as a player. It's not that at all. But it was just like, who is this guy? Who were the other guys available at that pick? Seems like a little bit of an unknown, and it seems like a guy you could have had later. And an altogether draft like that, where there were some different picks, but ones where you can really see the swing that the Red Wings were taking. That one was confusing, and they laughed and they were like, yeah, this, he's real good. He was really good. So I'm excited to watch Carter Mazur continue to develop. And I love the fact that his favorite player is Darren Helm, because it's become a little bit of a meme with Red Wings fans, and they're like, haha, Darren Helm. But again, I think I've said this exact thing before. If we can have a prime Darren Helm on every generation of the Red Wings, I'm over the moon, because remember what Darren Helm did for this team in the playoffs. So Carter Mazur, keep modeling your game after Darren Helms. Those have a place on cup competitive teams.
Carter Mazur has a phenomenal story. He was a late bloomer. He plays that gritty 200-foot game that you would expect on a bottom six cup contending team. And he's already missing his two front teeth. I mean, the guy's built for the playoffs.
It's going to take him, yes or no. We shouldn't get too far ahead with Carter Mazur in terms of expectations, right? Like, I think again, it's a little bit of Lucas Raymond, Mo Seider syndrome here, where everyone wants to see any good rookie on the Red Wings next year. And we're probably doing a little bit of that with Edvinsson, but it's going to take more time for Mazur, especially that kind of player and the path he's taken. There needs to be more patience, and that's not a slight on him. It's just not every guy's going to jump right into the NHL. That's extremely hard to do.
Well, yeah, there's two angles we have to take on this. One, like I already mentioned, it's a very good sign that a team that had 3 Red Wings prospects won the national championship. But then we also have to look at, well, these 3 guys won a national championship with their team, which means the rest of the team is probably pretty damn good and have helped them along. So Carter Mazur obviously earned everything he had this season, but he probably doesn't have the same point totals if he's on, Michigan State or something like that. That's the reality of it. So got to be careful in terms of development, because Denver could be a weaker team next year and Carter Mazur could put up almost identical numbers, but the season would actually be a big improvement in his development, just because he's doing it with less help around him. Because I think Bobby Brink has already signed with Philly, and I think they lost 1 or 2 other players because that's the nature of the NCAA. And they're going to get bigger and more prominent roles, because I think all 3 of them should be back with Denver next year. So, yeah, it's easy to want to see these guys break through as fast as possible. But as we've talked about, the Red Wings are nowhere near contending. So every decision with prospects in the organization needs to be made with what is best for this prospect. Team, NHL, AHL, be damned. That doesn't matter. Whatever is best for Mazur, whatever is best for Buium, whatever is best for Tuomisto, make that decision with no thought to the organization next season.
Speaking of Buium and Tuomisto, as a little bit of a prospect profile here again, in terms of the Red Wings, what's your take on them? Because I know Buium was not an unknown, but it was a little bit of a different philosophical pick than what some people were expecting. And Tuomisto has had an interesting, again, same thing where the Red Wings, people were expecting the Red Wings to go in a different direction. They took Tuomisto. What's your take on where they are in the system right now, depending on to what you just said?
Well, I would actually say philosophically, Buium is the exact type of pick. I would actually say they're both the type of picks that the Red Wings like. Very toolsy players taken outside of the first round with a good frame to build around and a good skill set to build around, but very raw, needing a lot of refinement. That's right up the Red Wings alley. So it was kind of a hit or miss, because Mazur was a freshman this year, for reference, but he was an overager in the draft. So he's, like I said, he's a year older than Buium. Buium was the true definition of a freshman, earliest age he could get in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he was almost a half a point per game defenseman. He outproduced Tuomisto, who I think is 2 or 3 years older, which isn't nothing. So obviously with his game, he didn't work out all the flaws this season. A lot of them are still there. He still has his lapses. He still has some consistency issues. But when he was on this year, it was very clear why he was a 2nd round pick for the Red Wings. Like, you didn't have to think very hard wondering why the Red Wings picked him where they did. There'll always be the argument of, yeah, but what about this player who was picked after it? There's always going to be those arguments. Don't ever marry yourself to those. So overall, I was very happy with Buium. Unfortunately, Tuomisto over his few years with Denver has not progressed the way we were hoping, because he was billed as, a big offensive defenseman who thinks the game really well, has a cannon for a shot, yada, yada, yada. And, ideally he'd come in, be the Red Wings' second power play quarterback one day in the NHL as, another right shot defenseman. It's not looking like that. The offense hasn't blossomed like they would have hoped. Not that he's a bad defenseman. I mean, he has worked out a lot of the kinks in his game, and he's definitely improved from where he was when the Red Wings drafted him, but not by as much as we would have hoped. So I'm not saying write him off. He's obviously still got potential, and he's still, in his early 20s. He's not old by any stretch, but next year for him, I does feel like a make or break. Like he's got to have that breakout season, or I don't know what the Red Wings do with him.
And as has been the story for a long time now, all the Red Wings have is draft picks. That's not gone away yet. It's not to the height, I think, of what we've seen, but that could still change depending on what direction Steve Yzerman moves in. More and more guys are going to be brought in. The longer you go, the more you get guys in the Yzerman system, even though I would still call it, at this point, it would be remnants of a Ken Holland system. So this is Yzerman's system, but you know what I mean? It's not every prospect can remain a prospect forever. So yeah, I think make or break to some degree is true for all of these guys, but especially what you mentioned. In the interest of, I think, sparing your ears, because, you know, we're grabbing the last remnants of either exhaustion, consciousness, or Evan, you got your brain fog.
Can you guys explain to me how someone can win basically the Hart, the Hobie Baker for NCAA, but can't win best goalie in the country? How can a goalie win best player in the country, but not be the best goalie in the country? Please explain that to me.
The
NCAA, man.
That's like winning the Hart, but not winning the Vezina. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So in a bubble, it's dumb as hell. And honestly, overall, it's dumb as hell.
Can we explain for the listeners what Evan was referring to?
Yeah. So Devin Levi had an absolutely unreal season for Northeastern this year. He was otherworldly, and he won the top NCAA goaltender. And Dryden McKay, who is a goaltender for Minnesota Duluth, I always get all the Minnesota teams mixed up, but we'll go with that, also had a phenomenal season, but was not in the same reality as Devin Levi. Like I said, he was on another planet. But Dryden McKay won the Hobie Baker for NCAA Most Outstanding Player. So he wasn't the most outstanding goalie, but he was the most outstanding player as a goalie. Now, what I think happened here was they viewed the Hobie Baker for McKay as more of a lifetime achievement award. Because he did set the NCAA all-time record for wins in a career this season. No goalie in the history of the NCAA has won more games than him. His team was very, very good every year he was there. He was very, very good every year he was there. It was like that year in the NHL way back when Erik Karlsson was head and shoulders better than Drew Doughty, but they gave Drew Doughty the Norris just because he was quote unquote due.
Wasn't that only like 4 years ago?
Yeah, honestly. But it feels very much like that's what happened here. Like, yes, we're going to acknowledge that Devin Levi had the better season, but Dryden McKay needs his due, and so they gave him the Hobie Baker.
Logic, baby. Can't wait for Calder and Hart and all that voting. Speaking of Hart voting, that's what I want to transition to. You know, I know Red Wings fans are often the rivalry between Detroit and Toronto is good, and it's always good to have those rivalries be strong. I don't ever pretend to say that you should, you know, arbitrate like a player just because he's good, but you have to recognize what Auston Matthews has done here. He officially accomplished within a 50-game span 50 goals, actually 51. So he's one of only 8 players that have ever accomplished that 50 and 50 feet in NHL history. One of 9. He makes it 9. Maurice Richard, Mike Bossy, Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Brett Hull are the official 50 and 50 scorers.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, not bad company, huh? Yari Curry, McGillney, and Cam Neely. And now Auston Matthews are known as the unofficial 50 and 50 seasons, as the NHL requires a player to have scored his 50th goal in or prior to his team's 50th game. So within a 50-game span, Matthews accomplished this. Look, I think Connor McDavid is easily the best player on the planet. And it's not like there aren't guys who are up there, but you watch Connor McDavid and you know, in a vacuum, not counting what's happened that season, he's the best player in the world. But the way the Hart Trophy is decided and voted on, and knowing what you need to do to win hockey games, which is score goals, how does it not go to Auston Matthews right now, in my mind?
So I have 2 points I want to make on this. The first one is, I do not care who wins between Auston Matthews and Connor McDavid. You can make very, very coherent arguments for both. And I'd have no arguments against either of them. I think their points per game is like 0.02 apart, with McDavid having the slight edge there. And then obviously Matthews has the edge in goals. The only argument that I constantly see that actually makes no damn sense to me is, Well, the definition of the award is most valuable player to his team. And Connor McDavid has Leon Draisaitl. So how can he be the most valuable when there's another player like that? Like, everybody's completely ignoring the absolutely insane season Mitch Marner is having. And
you guys are pretending that Auston Matthews isn't playing with Pierre Engvall.
Oh,
Come on now.
He's got Michael Bunting on his line, the Calder winner. Like, he's learning from his elders.
Exactly. I hate that that's a literal statement. Like, I really do. Because Michael Bunting is actually older than Auston Matthews. But anyways, no, like, I don't care if there's other good players. Because if we're going by supporting cast, Matthews is getting more help than McDavid is. And I don't think anybody can argue that. But for whatever reason, the talking point is the opposite of that. I would argue Marner's having a better season than Draisaitl is in a vacuum. But it doesn't matter. Again, I don't care. I want to change the definition of the award because his most valuable to his team is just dumb. We know what the award should be. Just best player, most outstanding season, however you want to do it.
Best performance in the season, most outstanding season. That's what it should be.
That's what it should be. Who cares? And then you can get rid of all these other dumb arguments out of the way and we can just focus on the player at hand because that would be way more fun. Because look at all the guys in the running right now. Almost every one of them has another elite player on their team. Ovechkin has Backstrom. Huberdeau's got Barkov, et cetera, et cetera. So again, circling back, what Matthews is doing in the goal scoring category is remarkable. Nobody's put up the type of goal scoring production he has since the mid 90s. What Connor McDavid's doing is always otherworldly. This is not a black and white argument. And so anybody who's trying to make it a black and white argument, you're wrong. It's just a matter of preference at this point because there is so little separating them.
I want to see this discussion. It's a healthy discussion, right? I love a Hart Trophy debate where it's not just, one runaway winner. The discussion should be about, hey, look at Connor McDavid just doing whatever he wants to do on the ice at will, playmaking, speed, cutting through offense, scoring whenever, versus Auston Matthews scoring at an almost literally unprecedented level in this generation of hockey. Like, that's what the debate should be about. And that's where you really should get into those X's and O's and nuances and little minutia to try to put one guy above the other. And you're right, Brad. It's not black and white. But yeah, reducing it to, Matthews plays with Marner or McDavid plays with Draisaitl. You have to have half a brain to realize that, yeah, good teammates are always going to help, but that's not what makes the performance, right? Like, it's reductive, and I think it's a lazy argument, and it's plenty of guys have great teammates. Plenty of guys have elite teammates who don't do these kinds of things. They have fantastic seasons. They have career seasons. Maybe they have seasons that the fans of that team will remember forever, but that doesn't mean that they're having Hart Trophy seasons. It's not easy to do this kind of thing. So in my mind right now, I think scoring the way Auston Matthews is what should put him above the rest. But I don't think anyone is insane for thinking it should be McDavid, or even before he slumped a little bit, Shesterkin, right? Like, this is the kind of thing you want as a hockey fan.
Steven Stamkos was the last guy to score 60 goals, and he did not win the Hart that year. It was Evgeny Malkin in 2011-2012.
How many points did Malkin put up that year? Malkin was.
I don't have that on. I don't have that information on me. I just.
You're not going to be our pull it up guy.
No, definitely not. But I thought he didn't win it that year, which was ludicrous to me. But yeah, Matthews is having a ridiculous season and absolutely deserves the Hart. I think he's the best player in the world right now.
Ooh.
Like, actually, I do. I definitely do.
Okay, you're a GM. The NHL has dissolved and reformed, and you have first pick, and you're allowed to pick one guy in your team. Who do you take?
Auston Matthews.
You take Auston Matthews over Connor McDavid?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Why not?
My friend, we were going to keep this episode short.
Why not?
The correct answer here was Mo Seider, but anyways.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Brad, for that injection of rationality. Okay, so Evan, your Hart Trophy vote goes to Auston Matthews right now.
Yes, sir.
Brad, who does yours go to?
It's tough. If If I could split my ballot, I would. That would be my honest opinion right now.
Boo.
But obviously, I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to go with Matthews. Tiebreaker for me is he tends to have a better 200-foot game than McDavid does. I don't buy into these McDavid's bad defensively arguments. Like, he's not going to win any Selkies, but he's also not incompetent there. But Matthews is legitimately an above average defensive forward. So couple that with the ridiculous offensive output. Yeah, I think I probably give the edge to him.
Yeah, I like McDavid is getting a second place vote here, but it's Auston Matthews for me. I'm so curious about Evan's comment, and people are going to be like, especially new listeners are going to be like, oh, this guy's has COVID. He hasn't talked a lot this episode. He's a little sick. And then Evan comes in with the bombshell. I think Auston Matthews is the best player on the planet. That's the Evan Lobsinger brand right there, folks. Welcome to the experience. All right. Speaking of Malkin, who was it that he cross-checked in the face?
Borowiecki.
Yeah. Cross-check to the face, left him bloodied. I think just a day ago, Sidney Crosby sucker punched Nick Dowd as well. What are the responses to that?
Pittsburgh are goons and Malkin has a short wick. Who could have known?
Yeah, Red Wings fans are intensely familiar. And there's also a history of Evgeny Malkin, getting the kind of punishment that he deserves, right? I'll never let that one go, man. I can never let that one go. It drove me nuts.
Yeah, this is very much a new personality trait for him, and he'll probably get the maximum allowable fine under the CBA, which is the equivalent of like $2.50 for him. I mean, the only thing that might save us in terms of another example of the NHL Department of Player Safety just absolutely shitting the bed is there's an identical incident that happened less than a month ago that resulted in a 2-game suspension. What Malkin did to Borowiecki here is absolutely no difference than what Auston Matthews did to Rasmus Dahlin. It's a cross-check to the face. Malkin's, I would argue, is worse because his was a little more direct to the front of the face, where Matthews got Dahlin from the side, and Malkin came dangerously close to breaking Borowiecki's finger on a slash where he knocked the stick out of his hands right before he cross-checked him in the face. So if they're looking for precedent on what the punishment should be here, they do not have to go back very far.
Yeah, I love that they had the Matthews suspension because I thought it was the right call. I think Leafs fans were also correct in pointing to situations in the past where they haven't made that call. I think that's one of the first times the NHL Department of Player Safety has gotten one of those situations correct, and I'd like to see them continue it here. It's another high-profile player doing the exact same stupid thing. It's malicious. It caused injury. You can't use your stick as a weapon in the NHL. This is a big boy league where you need to be able to take your punches. Same way I called for, being happy that Bertuzzi was throwing them. If Bertuzzi took him back, I'd have to say the same thing, but at no point are you allowed or should you be allowed to use your stick as a weapon. Plain and simple. And I don't buy the excuse of heat in the moment, and I don't buy the excuse of like, oh, lost control or whatever. No. These guys are on the top 0.00001% of hockey players on the planet. They have full control. They know what they're doing.
Bad time for Crosby and Malkin to be acting up too, because Pittsburgh's on a bit of a slide right now. I know they won their last game, but they haven't looked all that great lately. And in their division, losing games makes you fall down the standings in a heartbeat. So I don't feel bad for Pittsburgh at all, but just terrible time to be doing stupid stuff.
And especially heading into the playoffs too. Like, you make it in, sure, but you come in on a slump. That's not the playoffs.
I'm never betting against Crosby in the playoffs.
No, but still, you can't be in the wrong space as a team. You can't be in the wrong mindset as a player. Granted, some guys are going to say, oh, this is charging, getting the guys energized and the frustration is not bad.
Little vacation before playoffs.
Yeah, the Duncan Keith special.
Keith.
Yeah. Well, we got to text each other, buddy, before we, this is the same wavelength thing doesn't go against or goes against our brand of being completely opposite people.
True.
That's the real thing. Have you ever seen me and Evan in the same room?
Probably like our second last YouTube video.
Yes, many times.
Shut up, both of you. Okay. We're going to keep this one short, like we said. So we're going to jump into overtime for this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast. All of you new listeners and listeners of old, patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast is how you support this show. So when you see things like Winged Wheel podcast night at the LCA, when you see us do giveaways, put together things like the Mickey Redmond special flannels and things like that, that is made possible by our Patreon supporters. And you're the reason why we are able to dedicate the time to putting this podcast out. So, you know, we mean it when we say any and all success is afforded to you, and that is especially true for patrons. So patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast if you want to help support the show. Miss Days says, in true Detroit fashion, Winged Wheel podcast night was the worst reffed game of the season, utterly atrocious, from the constant phantom calls for the Wings to the whistles being completely away for Columbus. In other news, the season is basically over, but we keep playing guys hurt. Hronek and Larkin haven't practiced in over a month. What is stopping the administration from shutting them down to recover? It's really apparent that they're both dealing with something, and at times they're struggling. Is it because the organization needed wins for culture, or because there's legitimately no one else to eat those minutes?
Yes, and more likely, there's different types of injuries. If it's a type of injury that you're not going to make worse by playing on it, and then it's just pain management, leave it up to the player. And if it's off-season surgery or rehab that corrects it, fine. I don't think they'd be playing either of them if there was a risk that whatever's going wrong could get worse, because yeah, that would just be insane in a season at a point where it doesn't matter. So without knowing the injury, I've got a gut feeling it's something along those lines.
It's coming from Dalton Moore, says, does Winged Wheel podcast night mean it's going to go into overtime now? It has to, right? It's another tradition. I hadn't noticed that until he commented that. That's really funny. Yeah, that's if you want an overtime thrilling game, even when it was 4-2, it was Winged Wheel podcast night. They had to come back.
We're 1-0-1.
Yeah. See how it goes next season. Jake Nagy says, since being traded to Detroit, Vrana has 18 goals in 27 games as a Red Wing for a goals per game of .66. The only other players with the same or better pace in the NHL this season. Auston Matthews with a .87, which is absurd. Leon Draisaitl with a .69. Nice. Chris Kreider with a .67 and Forsberg with a .66. Is it possible that Vrana could be an all-star caliber player for the Wings moving forward, or do you think it's just a hot streak?
This is what his underlying analytics have said his whole career. This was the conversation we had when we traded for him. It was, he has performed at an exceptional per 60 rate, or whatever you want to call it. He just played a very limited role on a stacked Washington team. Will this continue when he's playing more minutes? And so far the answer is yes.
This one from Connor Howie, who's a brand new patron, says, hey boys, new patron here, joined yesterday at Winged Wheel podcast night. Connor, that means a lot, man. Thank you so much, and welcome to the Dub Club. It was great talking to you guys. Question, how close will the Wings be to the playoffs next season? I'm going to go with
maybe roughly the same spot.
Sorry, you think the same spot, Brad?
Same spot, but with more points. I don't think the discrepancy between the playoff teams and the non-playoff teams is going to be quite this dramatic next year. So I still feel like Detroit's going to finish in the 9, 10, 11 seed in the conference, but they won't be like a billion points out of it at this point.
I think I can't answer this one until I see what, Yzerman does through July, at least, right? Like, you have so much variability with this roster. You have Larkin and Bertuzzi's extension to come to sign at some point over the next, free agency has to start first, over the next 18 months or however long it is. You have Vrana is going to be a hot target for teams. And I'm not saying that they're going to trade him, but teams are certainly going to try. You have to figure out what you want to do with Hronek. You have to figure out what you want to do with the Seider and Raymond timeline. Yzerman can move in a couple directions here. And I have my opinion on what I would like to see. And that's changed over time, to be frank. But, I don't know. I think there's a version of this offseason where Yzerman moves his team way closer to the playoffs, and I think there's a version where he doubles down, and we see maybe a season like this one, and they're in the Connor Bedard Michkov conversation. I don't know.
Yeah, to me, it's the fact it's not really an internal look at the team; it's the external of the division. You still have Tampa, you still have Florida, you still have Toronto, and you have Boston, who turn back the clock every single year. So until those teams make a misstep or the Red Wings drastically improve, it's going to be a lot more of the same, for better or for worse.
Baseball question. Large says, hello, Mr. Dublinas. In the latest article, I translated Håkan Andersson, scout extraordinaire, saying he sees Victor Hedman potential in Simon Edvinsson. Just savor that statement. It's Håkan Andersson saying that. I genuinely believe what we have on our hands in Edvinsson and Seider will be the closest to second coming of Lidstrom and Konstantinov we can come. What do you think about his comments? He also says he's very impressed with Elmer Soderblom.
I have never been given any reason to doubt Håkan Andersson.
Every time Lidstrom comes up, I have to say, you can't compare players to one of the best players of all time and arguably the best or second best defenseman of all time. But every time we have this conversation, that qualifier seems more and more, not pointless, but softer. Because if you don't boil it to like overall ceiling, but you look at the qualities, yeah, Seider's making you double back on some things. I'm still, it is what it is. With Edvinsson, that inspires a lot of hope of the people to trust in this organization. People would put Steve Yzerman first, but Håkan Andersson has the justification to be at the top of that list. So if that's his opinion, then that bodes really well for Edvinsson and for Soderblom. Also,
nope.
Go ahead.
Nope. No rational takes. Victor Hedman or bust.
Lars also says, if you've been calling him Hacken or not closer to Hawken twice in this comment, there will be surstrumming in your mailbox. I think I got it, so I'm avoiding the stinky fish this time. Mr. Cloudicus says, make a first line with anyone in the NHL, only one player per team, add rules as you see fit. Love Mr. Cloudicus.
McDavid, Matthews, and then it doesn't matter. Pick anybody.
Could you put them both? I think you should use their true positions, though. That's the only thing.
Well, that's less fun.
Yeah.
Are we talking for just this season, or are we talking for like this is going to be my first line for as long as I can keep him under contract?
Marner, Matthews, Huberdeau. Moving on.
Wow, this guy's skipping over Connor McDavid. I guess I shouldn't be surprised based on what you said.
That's why I was specifying. Is it just this season, or is this, because if we're talking long term, I'm going McDavid. If it's just this season, I'm Matthews. And then, yeah, it'd be hard to argue against Huberdeau and Marner the way they're playing this year.
You mean Hart Trophy candidate, Jonathan Huberdeau?
Yes.
All right, we have time for one more comment here. And I'm Derek says, hey, everyone, I hope you had a blast at Winged Wheel Podcast Night at the LCA. I have two questions for you. If you had to choose between keeping Rasmussen or Zadina for the long haul, who are you keeping?
Zadina.
At this point, both players have underperformed based on draft stock and expectations. They've both had times where they've looked better. I think Rasmussen has had more of that lately. But, for guys where it's almost a project or a redemption arc that you need and nothing's a guarantee, you have to go with the one that's a higher ceiling in my mind, and that's Zadina. And that's only for the sake of the question. It wouldn't be easy to just give up on Rasmussen, and nor should we. I think we can see the same kind of redemption with him. Actually, he's doing better than Zadina on that front right now.
Yeah, if you take out the last month, Zadina, despite massively underperforming draft position, has still shown a lot more than Rasmussen has. Rasmussen obviously has had a much, much better stretch over the last month or so. But yeah, no, if we're taking in the last 2-3 years combined together, it's Zadina, and it's not particularly close, but Rasmussen has made it interesting, which I wasn't expecting, and that is fun.
And last question, if you had to offer sheet one player this year, who would it be, how much, and why? So one player who's an RFA this offseason. I think one guy you mentioned before, Brad, was Jesper Bratt. And I've heard his name come up before in offer sheet circles. It's not a bad one.
New Jersey's not particularly cap strapped, though. And given that he's probably going to be in that 5 to 8 range, the compensation would not be high enough for New Jersey, I think, to consider accepting that, because that's what you obviously got to factor in. Are you trading, quote unquote, trading Jesper Bratt for a first and a third or whatever it might be? I don't think New Jersey's doing that.
I think the only players I'd really want to offer sheet are ones for, it's an obvious statement, but a position in need, center, maybe pick up something on left D. And really, I want some longevity in terms of the outlook of their career. So if a guy is like a 26-year-old RFA, I don't mind the idea of offer shooting, but I'd rather shoot for a Bratt who's like a 23 right now, I believe, someone a little younger. So that significantly reduces the list. Someone mentioned to me Jack Roslovic before, and I think, that is might have been spurred by the hat trick he put up against Detroit. Vitaly Kravtsov has come up before as well, and I think that could be an interesting situation. But we're going to have to see what really comes up in terms of RFAs. With the cap projected to go up by $1 million, it's not a lot of relief, but it's maybe more than teams have seen over COVID. So it's going to be interesting, and I just don't know that there's going to be a lot of opportunity. And it's the NHL, right? So I don't know. I think there's no Elias Pettersson this year to draw that conversation in. All right, Brad, Evan, we owe these guys, we owe these ladies and gentlemen, all of our listeners, a more coherent episode. So let's take a nap for 3 days, and we'll be back with everyone on Wednesday night. Folks, all of you who came out to Winged Wheel Podcast Night at the LCA, all of you who donated to the Wings Money on the Board campaign as a part of the Jamie Daniels Foundation, Ken Daniels, Mickey Redmond, the Detroit Red Wings, Bally Sports Detroit, Daniela, everyone who came through, Prashanth Iyer, of course, Max Bultman, everyone who has supported this podcast. Thank you all so much. To the sponsors of this episode, the FanDuel Sportsbook, and the name level sponsors as well. We thank you, Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels, on behalf of the Sarah Ground Foundation. Kyle Karagitz, Nick Perks, Brett Bailey, Terry Driver of the number 69, Ryan Hanna's Banana Slam Jamathong, Matthew M. Rice, Billy Howell, Brandon M., Brian Johnson, Carl Brutanen Analuski, Citizen High Five, Craig Kibble, Daniel Garcia, Derek Enstem, DJ Denton, Give Blood, Fight Probert, Han Ali, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Justin and the Angry Mob, Kalen Wood, King Tone, Kyle Hashman, Marcus, Matt McKay, Nicholas Fritz, R.A., Ryan Hubbard, Scott Martin, Stay Fresh Cheese Bags, Stay Fresh Bags of Cheese, Stay Fresh Cheese Bag, Stay Fresh Cheese Bags, Stay Fresh Cheese Bags, Stay Fresh Cheese Bags. The Discord has been planning this, haven't they? Stay Fresh Greach Bags, Zach Spring, Sam Bankson, Stay Fresh Cheese Bags, Babe Landeskog, Cheese Bag, I Wish I Could Stay Fresh, Dave W., Eric Sinkowski, Evans Bingo Card, James Laporte, Jeremiah Dobo, Jeremy Brocker, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, presented by Stay Fresh Cheese Bags, Matt Keeler, Missing Vladdy More Than Ever, Papa Woody, Revi DeLuca, Stay Fresh Cheese Bags, 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 Stay Fresh Flea Bags, the freshest of cheese bags. There's a cue to Hulk growl. I'm not going to Hulk growl. You know what? Frick it. Arr. Trevor Pevovar, Zach Handyside, and Zach McCann, a driving range superstar. There go all our new listeners, you psychopaths. I love you. Never change, you lunatics.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockey Town Evan.